Lean out the window and just go, and then just close the window. Smith, that should be the intro. It's just each of us going.
Done. Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
I'd never really had any interest in watching it and I was proved absolutely right.
I think it's amazing. I really, really love this film.
The film's still a pile of steaming dog shit.
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar. Right, how do I do this?
I don't know.
This is the first one of the series as well.
First ever episode we've ever done.
First episode we've ever done.
Is episode
one, series 6. Hello.
Series 27.
Welcome back to Off Radar. Welcome back to the new series. I'm James Smith, and as always, joined by James Eatock.
Hello.
And Neil Brock.
The force is strong in this one.
I was hoping for like a Chewbacca, but anyway.
I can't do it. Eatock can definitely do a Chewbacca.
Oh, it's almost like it's like no, I don't. But it's something like it's something like that. Oh.
Impression shitters you.
I can do it. I always want to do Yoda and I just do Grover. It's all like, hello everybody. It's just like I've gone totally into Grover zone there.
There's some Frank Oz Grover as well, so it kind of works.
Yeah.
That kind of does work.
We can connect it to Blues Brothers with Frank Oz. It goes. Yeah. It never stops.
Okay. Well, anyway, as you guessed, today we're talking about The Phantom Menace, which came out in 1999.
It's crazy.
And, this is obviously a Star Wars film. But
what?
Quite bizarrely, we're into Series 6 of this podcast, and we've not touched this... I was going to say genre, I guess it is kind of
that's
genre.
A franchise.
Franchise, there's the word. Like McDonald's. Franchise.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just... Yeah.
As big. But yeah, we've not dipped our toe into the Star Wars universe, as it were. So before we get into the Phantom Menace, I guess here's a first question for you both. Fans of Star Wars generally, or were you fans of Star Wars generally? Maybe even before Episode 1 came along? Nige, I can imagine you were.
Yeah, huge fan. Yeah, I loved it growing up as a kid. It was always on sort of TV. I had it on video, I had some of the toys. Remember, me and my brother had the Millennium Falcon toy. Was a huge fan. And when it was obviously the build up towards the Phantom Menace, I would have been about sort of 16. So I was the right age to be like, wow, it's huge. Star Wars. Obviously, before we kind of got into this world where everything is just
Star Wars.
milked to an inch of its life. So yeah. But yeah, certainly a big fan of the originals.
So I take it, did you see Phantom Menace at the cinema then?
Bizarrely, I can't remember when I first watched Phantom Menace. I can't remember if I went to the cinema. I can't remember if I watched it round a mate's house. I remember absolutely nothing about the first time I watched it, despite the fact I was obviously super keen to watch it. I was 16. I was also a stoner, so that probably explains it. But yeah, I can't honestly remember when I first saw it. And I know that I haven't watched it in a very long time. But and I remember watching some of the sequels. I think by the time the third one came out, I was at uni, and I think I watched it on the world's worst cinema cam version that a mate in my halls had downloaded. Well, not my halls by that stage, but a mate had downloaded it. It was like watching it on a toaster. It was horrific. So I don't know. You know what? I don't know. Other than the new ones, the newer ones that came out sort of fairly recently, I don't think I've ever seen a Star Wars at the cinema.
Wow. That's very surprising.
And I broke that with I can't even remember what the latest one was called. Well, the latest three, I should say.
The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of the Skywalker.
I always get confused because there's obviously the Rogue One and the in-betweeny ones.
Well, that was the thing. Because you know what I'm like, where I like avoid trailers. I don't want to hear any spoilers. When I went to watch Rogue One after the first new Star Wars had come out, I just thought it was a sequel to that. And then after half an hour, I was like, "What the fuck is going on?"
Yeah,
and then I realised it's like, "Oh, this isn't even this."
And at the very end of Rogue One, you were like, "Hang on."
Story. And I was just like, I've been gypped. I just thought this was the Star Wars. Although I enjoyed it.
I've had gypped since the 90s over.
Yeah, exactly. I'm bringing it all out. I'll get the pods out in a second and we can have a right time.
Oh, man.
Anita, same question. I guess, fan of the original three.
It's so funny when, I remember Fairless, our mutual friend Fairless, could not believe it when I told him all those years ago. I said, I was never a fan of Star Wars growing up. He's like, what? I was just like, no, I loved sci-fi, but mainly from an animation point of view. But I say that I loved Ghostbusters, the film. So I don't know why. I remember, at the time, I was the right age for Star Wars toys, but I hadn't seen it on the cinema. Back then the video release hadn't even been out. The first time I remember seeing Star Wars, any of it, the film this is, was when my dad's friend Barry had a VHS, and it was
a recording,
and that's the one I infamously recorded over probably the only copy of Star Wars in London with an episode of He-Man. I was like, oops, but it's.
You were like, yes.
I was like, yeah, I got that episode.
Scam.
But yeah, it was. I was just never really a fan of it. So, but I always appreciated it, if that makes sense. I remember in the 80s there was the Ewoks cartoon, there was the Droids cartoon on BBC One. I didn't really care for those, but regardless, when they announced Phantom Menace, I was like, oh, I wouldn't mind going to see that. And my friends and I, the hype around that, again, people, you have to be around at the time. It was huge. My friends, and unlike Nige, I remember sitting in the cinema, and even to this day, remembering that feeling, just goosebumps. And it was the same every time I went to see a Star Wars film, because I saw the prequel trilogy and the obviously most recent trilogy, and I still get goosebumps every time you get that 20th Century Fox logo followed by a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and that fucking John Williams score when it kicks in. It's amazing. It transports you somewhere. And I was just like, I remember seeing Phantom Menace, and me and my friends just like, oh my god, we're in the cinema watching a Star Wars film. It felt, and not to get into too much of a tangent, but back then it was like a real special thing until...
Oh, it was an event.
It was an event, like Star Wars. There's a Star Wars film? And then
I think also it hadn't been made for, some 30 years. After what, the Return of the Jedi was that, they did... I remember Nige might remember this, the... Caravan of Courage was, I think it was an Ewok.
Well, there was the Battle for Endor that I had on VHS.
Battle for Endor.
But I think there was a couple, So there was kind of Smith, you saying that it was 25 years. It wasn't. It was only 15.
It was 15.
Star Wars was 77.
Yeah.
I think Empire was 81 or maybe a bit earlier.
80.
And then Return of the Jedi was probably about 83, 84. But that's rough.
It felt like it. Yeah, it felt like a...
Oh, no, it's crazy.
Like the kind of... I mean, you could say that... Well, maybe we'll get into this about this one, but, you could feel like how different it felt with the Phantom Menace coming along, and almost it was a new era for cinema.
Well, it was also like a new... It felt like... this film was inviting a new, and I'm sure this film did bring in an entirely new fan base to it, because you'd have had a generation of kids, maybe 10, 11 or whatever, that went to see this and be like, oh, I love Star Wars, as the generation before had. And I just remember, just really enjoying the experience of seeing Star Wars, and I was just like, this is incredible. I'm watching a Star Wars movie.
I wonder if they put a terrible character in to try and appease the audience.
There's one thing that'll make you laugh when we get to that.
That's no way to talk about Jake Lloyd.
Just one thing, just Ethan was saying about how it was so hyped and everyone wanted to see it. Something I was doing a lot of reading, obviously, in advance of this, because there's no trivia about Star Wars at all. But during the first week of the first trailer being released, the first week of the first trailer, many theatres reported 75% of the people would go and pay to watch a film.
That's
right.
Sit
there, watch the trailer, and
yeah,
just walk
leave.
out.
Yeah.
Just like not even stay for the film, not even stay for any of the trailers.
I remember that.
Like,
just to watch the trailer.
Yeah, there are 4 of the films that did like...
Before the days of YouTube.
Well,
so.
exactly, yeah. There's no other way of getting it. So the 4 of the films that kind of benefited, I guess, from these extra box office takings were none other than Meet Joe Black with a good old Brad Pitt in, The Waterboy, good old Adam Sandler.
Jesus.
Wow.
The Siege, which I've never seen, which is like a Denzel Washington, Bruce Willis film, apparently.
Yeah.
And also A Bug's Life. So there you go.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Interesting. It's so when I was growing up, I was it was weird. Like, I'm a bit like probably in between the two of you, like with the original 3. So I saw them like loads, but I would never say I was like a massive fan. I felt like I was almost like, I felt like I had to be a fan. Best dad ever. What are you trying to tell us, E-Talk?
Yeah, sorry, boys.
E-Talk just held a mug up with best dad ever on. Anyway, so I had seen them a number of times back then, but I was never like, I felt like I had to like love them, but I was never like a massive fan of them. But like E-Talk, I saw Phantom Menace at the cinema. And I remember it really well. One of the, the best cinema experiences I think I've ever been, or probably will ever go to, because the cinema was packed. And when that music started, people were cheering. And this, in the UK, like that happens really rarely. And but not only like at the beginning of a film, like you sometimes get it at the end, maybe an applause, and it happened at the end as well. But it was just like the experience. It was almost like being in a show, like a West End show.
Exactly.
But I went and saw Attack of the Clones at the cinema. Went and saw Revenge of the Sith, which came out probably
2004.
Around the time I met you guys, or you. Because I remember watching that. E-Talk. I think I saw that like around that time, and then I saw Force Awakens. Obviously me and E-Talk went and saw that with Fairless.
I saw that 3 times, the Force Awakens, at the cinema.
And then what else was there? I started to check out when they just started releasing so much stuff. I got like I was like, I don't know where I am now in the story.
No, it's gone. It's gone. It's like I was going to get more into this in the end, but like
saturation.
So I'd be like, as soon as it's nice when Disney get a hold of something. It's also very bad because, like with this, they have just utterly, like Nige said, milked it for all it's worth, and it's to the point where it's not special. If you hear now that there's a Star Wars film coming out now, you'd probably be like, whatever.
Yeah, whereas like
which
you
is
said,
nuts.
like before it was like when
the Force Awakens came out, that was like
it was like once every 2 years or something, and it's like it was special because of the way, and also the Force Awakens came out so many years after Phantom Menace as well, so there was another big break in the franchise. But now it's just like every 6 weeks there's a series or and it's just like too much.
I know what you mean, Top, what you're saying, like when Disney gets something, it's kind of like that, they're going to spend money on this and they're really going to push it, but then it's like, as you say, they just milk it to an inch of its life, and then it's like,
It's a real shame. Like I don't believe, and this is the thing that I think certain critics on YouTube and social media don't understand. It's like no one ever goes into any of this, and this is applicable to every film we ever watch. No one ever goes into something to make something bad. No one gets the rights to be the head of the Star Wars franchise and goes, right, I'm going to utterly destroy this. It's just that it gets so mismanaged, and I think so many productions now are overproduced, with so many people. Like, you could get into the whole thing with Star Wars being marketed. It's like when it gets sent to China, they have to take the most reasonable ones. They have to take Finn off the cover because you can't promote a film with a black man on the cover. And it's like that's crazy. That's nuts. Crazy. Like, I mean, that's a broader thing. But anyway, coming back to Star Wars, it's the Phantom Menace. This was like.
This was, I imagine this is trivia, but it's probably one of the biggest grossing films of all time as well.
I actually went on Wikipedia, looked at the box office. Yeah. This sounds crazy now. The most recent Star Wars series that's already been cancelled cost $200 million to make, right? Yeah. This film, and obviously we're talking 20-something years earlier, this cost just over $100 million, and I guess over time it's made $1 billion.
Yeah, $115 million, and then over $1 billion,
So yeah, the Phantom Menace.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Written and directed by George Lucas. By the way, I have, before watching this film, I've gone back and watched all the original three before episode 1, which I know technically the wrong way around, but I think it's almost the right way around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, in terms of... I'll put it this way: in terms of the heart and production of Star Wars, you're watching it the right way round. That's correct.
You can't talk about this. You watched John Wick 3 first. I'm surprised you didn't start with
I do.
Ones, and then you've just
I do watch films out of order.
Just spin a wheel with a number on it. Right, today it's episode 4.
But I think almost the intention of the storytelling is to watch it in the order they're made, really, if you think about it. Because some of the things you wouldn't know.
I think now it's like... Well, yeah, it's impossible to say because obviously it was released afterwards. There's no taking back from that. But if I was a kid now, I would go and watch the first one first. I'd do 1, 2, 3, 4, which would be
maybe this
out of order
is a debate for slightly later. But knowing what you know when you go into the first one, you know that Anakin is Darth Vader. If you watch episode 1, you wouldn't necessarily know that, would you?
That's what Nige's saying. Like, yeah, that would. But
I think that's better, knowing that he's Darth Vader. You know what I mean? Because you're seeing. I suppose
it works. It works both ways. It's like Fight Club. It's like you watch it once and then you watch it again, knowing something else. You get two different experiences.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a tricky thing.
Fair enough. So yeah, obviously this one, Phantom Menace, was written and directed by George Lucas, who. You might recognise, but he, famously, obviously, did write and directed The New Hope, and then kind of stepped away from directing Empire and Return of the Jedi. So kind of, this is a return for him, really, as well, in a more creative sense, rather than just story and producer and all the rest of it. And I think he did the other two as well, didn't he? I think he did Attack of the Clones and...
Yeah, he did all three of the prequels,
these ones. Starring Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn.
Did you watch it? Qui-Gon Jinn?
Well, when you read it... Ewan McGregor, obviously, as Obi-Wan. Natalie Portman as Queen Amidala and Padme...
Amidala.
Nelson Mandela.
Natalie Portman.
I know she's talented, but wow, that was a stretch.
She's really talented, but that would...
And I didn't clock this, but Keira Knightley as
a 12-year-old Keira Knightley playing a decoy to an 18-year-old Natalie Portman.
But and to me, it was just like, it's Natalie Portman playing all these different roles.
Well, that's the thing. They kind of used her a couple of times as herself, as a decoy. When it is
it's like a double decoy.
Yeah. But apparently, when her mum, like Keira Knightley's mum, came on set, and they kind of asked Keira Knightley not to do the film, not to audition for it, but she was a huge Star Wars fan. I was like, I really want to do it. And it was obviously a lot of it was being filmed in England. When her mum came to visit her on the set, she couldn't tell the difference between Natalie Portman and her own daughter. So,
I mean, it works. That's the thing.
I
was watching it, and then
at one point, Portman's only 16 in this film as well.
Probably when it was filmed, when it came out, she would have been 19. So yeah, that makes sense. It probably took.
It's funny, like on those scenes when you see Queen Amidala with the handmaidens in the background. There's one point where I was just like, oh, there's Natalie Portman in the background, but it's like it's easy to mix them up because, like Nige said, they do. Sometimes she is playing that role. They swap. But then for the majority of the film, when they're on Tatooine and stuff, obviously Natalie Portman is playing the handmaiden and the other. I don't think it's Keira Knightley at that point, but there's another decoy playing Queen Amidala.
Bloody hell.
So it's gets confusing.
It does.
Natalie Portman was so young that she missed the premiere party for this film because she was taking her high school final exams. So
okay. Well, there you go. And yeah, as I mentioned, I mean, obviously we've got lots of other kind of supporting cast, but I won't go into all of those. But Jake Lloyd, who I mentioned as Anakin, who was basically... tipped and was a child star of this film, and notably in Jingle All the Way as well. But I read a sad article. He's the little kid in Jingle All the Way.
I did not know that.
I didn't. I just recognised him when I was watching it back, and I googled him. I was like, oh yeah. But I did read a really sad article about him today.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say it's a sad article now. If you'd have read the article a few years ago, you'd have been much worse because he had a huge amount of problems with obviously being teased because he was the kid from Star Wars, so people would make like lightsaber sounds every time he walked past. And eventually his mental health got so bad and he was trying to sort of cure it with like drugs and alcohol, and he was diagnosed as schizophrenic. Then he was in like a really bad like car chase, I think in 2015, trying to escape from the police and everything like that. He's sought treatment on a number of occasions since then. But you're right, like literally, I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago, there was an article where he'd reached out to a journalist and basically said, you know what, I'm doing okay. And like he actually
that's good.
is
a happy ending.
He's really appreciative of the fans of Star Wars. He still thinks a lot of the movies. He never feels like he was exploited or anything like that as a kid. He's still got a really like strong relationship with it, and he feels like, certainly at the moment, when people kind of reach out and was like, oh, you're Jake Lloyd, he actually gets a lot from that. He almost gets like incentivized, because I mean, this is guy, after that crash car chase in 2015, he went to jail for 10 months. Like, he was behind bars. They tried to get him like psychiatric help there, but there was just no beds. And it was only recently he had like a full-blown psychotic break in like March 2023 that he finally kind of got the proper treatment he needed. And he's only just come out of like, I think it was like an 18-month sort of spell in a mental health facility in California. And says he's pretty good, can accept like taking on continued treatment, because for a long time he was like pushing against it because there's certain conditions where you don't recognize you've got a problem. Everyone's been very supportive, and he's just in a much better place. So whilst it's sad that obviously he's been through all of this, he's at a good place in his life and his recovery, and like all the best to him, really. Off Radar, Episode 1. Turmoil has engulfed the latest series of the Off Radar podcast. The decision to watch and review The Phantom Menace is in dispute, given all other Star Wars films available that we could have watched instead. Hoping to resolve the matter with a witty introduction, James Smith stopped all trade shipping of comedy material to the small planet of Nige. While Congress, which is largely ETOC and any cheerful scout listens to the pod, endlessly debate this alarming chain of events, Nige nevertheless introduces the film regardless by saying it kicks off with 2 Jedi Knights visiting the Trade Federation. Bad stuff goes down. Everyone gets involved, including a hilarious Jar Jar Binks, a queen played by Natalie Portman, and a small child who may or may not end up wearing a badass black helmet in a sequel. I think it can best be summarised by the chorus lyrics to the Weird Al Yankovic song The Saga Begins, which is a cover of America Pie, which are My, this here Anakin guy, maybe Vader someday later, now he's just a small fry, and he's left his home and kissed his mommy goodbye, saying, soon I'm gonna be a Jedi, soon I'm gonna be a Jedi. So there you go.
There you go.
I mean,
there you go. So have you been exposed to Weird Al Yankovic again?
Again, even though I told you guys I bloody hated that film, but there we go. Star Wars. There we go.
Star Wars. That's it.
The Phantom Menace. I mean,
I don't think we've ever taken that long to get to a synopsis.
No, I don't.
But it was worth the wait, right?
We're 30 minutes recording already, but it was worth the wait. It was a great synopsis. Thank you, Nige, for indulging me to the point of absurdity. Where else to start than what you've kind of already said, the opening music. I think you can't not start without mentioning John Williams to this film, because I think... I mean, we've talked about John Williams a number of times on this podcast, probably with Indy and Superman. And actually, the other day I was like in the shower and I was singing Star Wars after watching the film, like just humming it. And then I thought, you know what? Sounds like a few of those bars sound a little bit like Superman, so I thought, now I'll do Superman.
Course, yeah.
And then I thought, can I go back to Star Wars? And I couldn't. You know what I mean?
No, they're very kind of earwormy, like fantastic pieces of music. But once you do that, then you do Superman, and then it's like, how do you go back? It's like, how can you go back?
It's like, you can't
Superman, Star Wars. Yeah. But no, for this, I think the musical key for this one is one of the, like, my friends and I think even we did this with Fairless. It's like the little key piece of music that sums up the Phantom Menace, which is...
Well, that for that one, I mean, this comes much later in the film for this final battle, but that's quite different because it's ethereal and
so good. That's the thing I remember even more than the pod race, and it is that music. But sorry, Smith, you were saying it. I just find it. That was what in my head after watching this. I was just going. But yeah,
it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant because it's a departure away from the original, but it's taken it to that next level. Because obviously at that point in the film, right near the end, we'll skip to the end. But Darth Maul is like this kind of devil-like character, so it's got this kind of ethereal, godlike, devil-like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kicks in when he does. He demonstrates like, oh, you think this is a lightsaber? It's a double lightsaber, and that's when the music kicks in. It's just like, I remember in the cinema there was like an audible gasp because you just didn't, like, we hadn't seen the like Nige even back then. We were avoiding trailers, and when it, like we completely jumped to the end, but like
we really haven't we?
Double lightsaber, just like, oh my god! But let's jump back to the start,
back to the beginning. But
back to the beginning.
Where we get to see Obi-Wan's
Obi-Wan and his little ponytail.
And I was going to say, I still think to this day it was genius casting to have Ewan McGregor as a young Alec Guinness, because he's so like, Ewan McGregor is such a character actor, and he kind of, he really gets into it. Him doing like young Alec Guinness voice, it's so perfect. You feel like you're looking at a young Obi-Wan Kenobi. You don't feel like, this is Ewan McGregor playing Obi-Wan Kenobi when he's young. It's just, it feels like he's embodied. Alec Guinness is like, oh well.
Yeah, and obviously as a Scottish actor as well, he's so good at this English accent.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
And he's also like gone on to basically survive the franchise, if that makes sense. He basically, he pops up in so many of the film. I think in the modern films he comes back, doesn't he? In the
he did the series, didn't he?
He did the series,
which I've never seen, but no, you're right. He is so good, and and obviously he's. Because if you've watched the old ones first, you'll know that he's like the apprentice in the old one, the master, in the older ones. Whereas in this, he's like, I wouldn't say he's learning in the he's established as a Jedi, but he's come to the end, and Liam Neeson is the master. So it's it's kind of like that same like rites of passage, I guess, as the original
the original script. Liam Neeson's character was supposed to be like in his sort of 50s, 60s, an actor of that age kind of thing. But when Liam Neeson expressed interest, Lucas was like, it's got to be him, because he thought he was such a great actor. And obviously, McGregor, like you said, they had like, I think it was like 50 different actors who kind of went for the role, that were shortlisted for the role, I should say, because I'm sure many more went for it. And they had two main criteria. Obviously, one, that they can act, and two, that they can pass as a young version of Alec Guinness, and like that immediately that narrows your kind of options massively. So it was interesting. Like for me, I don't think he's great in it. I've never really been that convinced as Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. No, like I'm not going to go like straight into a really early review, but there's barely anyone that comes out of this film with credit in terms of acting, I would say. Like, and I guess if I was like a bit more cynical when I'd watched the original Star Wars, you could maybe say the same. But then
I was going to say, don't you think that about the original?
Fisher, like Harrison Ford, they're so good in it. Like the originals. True. But anyway, but
there is a certain element in these films where they're almost directed to be a little bit wooden, like the way they act.
Oh yeah,
like even the way Natalie Portman talks, it's very straight, and there's not. I know that you're right. Like Han Solo is probably one of the exceptions in the originals.
Stow aboard separate ships and meet down on the planet.
You were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short.
Oh, should we talk about... I don't know if this is a... I don't know if it's I wouldn't say it's controversial. It's just weird decision making in terms of character accents in this movie. That there seems to... I remember at the time that... Even back then, I remember
Jamaican,
the Foundation people, whatever they're called.
Those two guys doing almost like
Asian,
very bad Asian impersonations.
It's like Japanese or something, and it's very odd because you've cast. It is odd.
But I don't know, like the actors playing them. Are they just, I don't know. Are they English speaking, doing bad impressions, or are they? I mean, they've obviously been directed to act like that, but it's a weird choice, because obviously they're not trying to like. it can be perceived as somewhat insensitive. But obviously they're not trying to be, because it's like, no, we're doing alien voices here. But it's like, the alien voices have to sound like a bad, Charlie Chan kind of 90s, 60s impression. Do you know what I mean?
I remember Jar Jar Binks getting... Obviously, it got a lot of criticism generally, but I remember it got a lot of criticism for the accent. But yeah,
because it dips in and out of.
The guy who voiced like one of them at least, Newt Gunray, was actually a guy from London. So,
God blimey, miss! He should have done Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins.
Yes.
All right, Padme, you want to have a word?
But we
with
are introduced to Jar Jar Binks very early on in this film, and I mean, I think. It's interesting because it's one of the big memories of this film. It's one of the big talking points of this film. And without doubt, one of the most annoying characters that's ever been put on screen. Luckily, though, I actually don't think he's in it as much as I remember. He's in it for the opening.
Oh, just the number little lines that he has, just especially when they just it's just so unnecessary. And then there's the battle scene that he's in, and
I will say this, and I can't. This may sound like I'm lying. I'm not. You said Phantom Menace, right? I watched it last week and sat down to watch it, and I thought, right, here we go. And I'm not lying. It got to that scene on that planet, and it cuts to a shot of him oh no, and you see him for the first time. I forgot he was in it. I was just like,
oh wow.
So it was like being hurt all over again. I was just like, oh no.
No again. The bees hereabouts crazy.
Because honestly, it was like I'd almost removed that memory. Whenever I think of Phantom Menace, I would think of pod race, Darth Maul, Jedi battles. It's almost like I'd removed Jar Jar, because, as we know, in Attack of the Clones and the next Revenge of the Jedi was the third one, I think. Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah,
Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Jedi. I like that one.
They removed Jar Jar pretty much, didn't they? He was out of the story.
I don't think he's in it at all. Is
because of the? I think
maybe briefly in Attack of the Clones.
He got such negative feedback.
He does something really consequential for the whole thing, and I can't remember what it is.
You're right.
But he's the part of the key for why.
He falls over and puts something in something.
The vote as well, or something. He's involved in the vote.
Yeah,
I can't remember, but anyway, he is.
But I'd forgotten he was in it.
And obviously, the interesting thing with his character is, this. Well, since the other ones, we're mixing now CGI and practical effects.
Yeah,
and some of the CGI stuff for 1999, obviously, is excellent. Some of the droids, I think, are really well done, and obviously lightsabers, the shooting. It's wow, how incredible that. Some of it, Jar Jar, for instance, is it's your criticism, Nige, of John Carter. It's there's a CGI kind of blobby thing on screen, and it's but the mixture, some is really good, I think. Some is done and it just looks a bit dated.
I just think there's so much of it you don't even really notice. I think the thing with John Carter is when it's those scenes with the kind of aliens, it's very obvious. There's so many aliens in this, or there's so many visual effects. I was reading apparently 1,950 of the shots had visual effects. Only the scene right at the start where they release that toxic gas on Obi-Wan and old Liam Neeson's character was the only sequence that didn't have any digital alteration, which seems insane. I know films since then as well have become visual effects all over the place, but this must have been one of the highest number of effects
when they did the Force Awakens. When they did the Force Awakens, they made a big deal about going back to practical effects, didn't they? Do you remember that?
Which I think is to the benefit of films generally.
Of course, because these three prequels became almost infamous for relying so much on green screen. Don't get me wrong, they do a good job with a lot of the green screen.
Yeah.
Oh God!
Well, I was going to say, Ewan McGregor kind of said, because obviously he's been interviewed tons about this since, and he basically just kind of, when they asked him about it, he kind of chuckled and said he recalled that his performance in the film consisted of walking into rooms and looking up. That was basically it, because he was always looking at something else. And the amount of scenes as well, you can tell where someone's just talking to a tennis ball or...
the bit when they first meet Jar Jar and they're both looking up at him, but not quite looking up at him correctly. And it was just I can see. And I think also, going, like Smith said, you said the CGI was relatively okay. I think a lot of the space battle and Jedi, lightsaber stuff is great. But when it comes to the CGI characters, like the Jar Jar, the race of like Jar Jar Binks characters, like the big guy as well, they're all a bit too. It's that CGI where it's a bit too like there's too much movement. Everything looks like it's made of jello. And granted, they're aliens, but it's a weird look. And I understand that you're creating these computer generated characters, so you want to give them a lot of movement. But when you look at a real person talking, they're like, oh, I'm talking here, and then I'm making this point, and then I'm making that point. But the CGI characters are like, look at me constantly moving and doing all this, me so this and that. And it's just that kind takes you out of it. And I know I'm talking about Jar Jar Binks, but
yeah, definitely. I did like, obviously, when we first entered the underwater world of Jar Jar. I did love that kind of reveal when we're kind of coming down into this whole new world that's underwater, and then it's a bit weird. They kind of get off into almost like a dome type thing, and it's just like, oh yeah,
it's like not Captain, it's Stingray. It's a bit like that, isn't it?
It is, yeah, very much big old domes, very much like Stingray. But some of the characters that like they create around this are like great, like that big dinosaur fish thing was, and he's like, it's always a bigger fish. But but I always remember that line as well. But but I think it's well done, and like for the time as well, you kind of forget it's from 1999, which is pretty incredible, really. Some of the CG and visual effects in this.
I think my favourite like CGI effect is when, again, like Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson, they jump down from like this platform quite far, and you see their like little CGI visualizations, whatever, jumping, and then it cuts to a practical shot where they've clearly just jumped off a box that was about 2 foot high, and it's just like,
I know the exact shot you're
and it's just about. Like, oh dear. But there's little bits like that. But obviously they went to a huge amount, and there was a lot made at the time about the visual quality of this film and like how unbelievable really it was. And I think it actually got nominated for an Oscar. It got nominated for 3 Oscars in the end, but I'm pretty sure one of them was for the effects, surely. It must be, best effects, visual effects, best effects, sound effects editing, and then best sound as well was the 3 it was nominated for, but did not win.
Did you know you can now subscribe to Off Radar It's a Movie podcast on YouTube? You can watch exclusive trailers and listen to brand new full episodes. All links and info in the description down below.
Somebody stop me!
Obviously, early on, we meet Anakin as well. Yeah. And I really liked watching this after just watching the old ones. So you like I said earlier, you got that knowledge that this is the boy turning into Darth Vader. But then also, I love the fact that, which I totally forgot, that Anakin made C-3PO.
C-3PO. That's a great one. Because I love how raw he is as well. He's like not fully there.
What he calls him naked. He's like that for the whole film. And I forgot that he's like that for the whole film. But also, he doesn't interact with... the other droid, what's he called?
R2-D2.
You just assume they've always been buds.
But there's this odd moment.
I was going to say, it's a really sweet scene when C-3PO meets R2-D2.
He's the one who says he's naked, isn't he? So.
Yeah, he's the one who goes, blip, blip, blip. He goes, I'm naked.
And it was Kenny Baker and Anthony Daniels as well, like reprising
their roles.
So. And there's this very odd moment early on, and she admits basically that Anakin is like a virgin birth, and so she,
the second coming of Christ,
became pregnant. Yeah, exactly. And it's obviously like Jesus, but then you obviously know that he turns to the dark side. So it's a real kind of interesting thing where, is George Lucas poking fun at religion, or is he just messing around?
I think there's a lot of religious themes to the
I wouldn't say he's poking fun. No, Lucas is just like he used to do quite a bit, but he's borrowing.
Yeah, but
he loves a good old borrow.
I totally forgot that, and it's interesting that but they never really come back to that. At least in this film they don't. But and then obviously, like you said, I think it's really worth talking about the pod race scene.
The cinema experience of that was fucking amazing.
I remember the computer game coming out for like the maybe like the N64. I think
N64,
yeah, and just remember like that was. And again, it's kind of one of those things. Like it's a huge set piece. It's something that it's the sort of thing you'd watch in a film, and it'd be the thing you talked about the next day. Like it was so visually just like wow. And you're right, it's just a lot of Jake Lloyd's mouth just
it's like a really surreal Wacky Races, if you've ever seen Wacky Races. But I remember at the cinema like it being basically my favourite scene. But I love going back and watching this, like for most of it, which is rare probably in this sort of film. It's engines revving and it's like an F1 race. There's no music until
it feels great. Final lap.
But it's good, but I did think though, I did think it went on a bit too long, like on this viewing. Like,
it's surprising how long it is.
It's very long. Yeah.
Like definitely. It felt like they're going around again. Like whereas at the cinema,
honestly,
like, wow.
Like. My friends and I, when that scene happened, even to this day, like we still talk about it, it was because you're in a cinema and it was like, 1999. That was just when films were being digitally projected for the first time. So I think Toy Story 2 was the first digitally projected film in the UK. And so you had that, but also you had the surround sound for that pod race. I will never forget. I think it's on like nearly this last lap, when he's kind of the foe, like the kind of, I forget his name. He's the one who's like
that guy
winning the race, but
isn't he like Mexican or something? But he's a little voice,
and he's right behind Anakin, but he's in this giant ship with. And the thing is, like, I remember in the cinema, you hear the engine behind you. It's just like because his one is like it's just making that noise, whereas Anakin's is. And you go, and we're just like, oh my god, this is the best scene ever.
I love the fact that Warwick Davis pops up.
I was about to say, Nige would have loved that. Nige like Warwick
was one of those little furry things in Return.
He's twice in that scene because he plays the little green guy.
He does, the little friend.
And he's in the crowd as well. Yeah, I was just like, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, if you go on like IMDb, like when you look at the photos for this film, the first one is like Warwick Davis looking slightly deranged next to like the junk trader guy who obviously like he sort of gambles the Anakin's freedom essentially. So
but that pod race is just it's what I love about it as well. They do a really good thing. Like we already get a bit of Anakin. We know he's a genius because he's a child. He's built C-3PO. He's created life technically. But what I love about during that pod race is you see him kind of on the fly thinking. He's got to think quickly, because he has to. Every lap seems to be a new. It's like a video game. It's like, and now this has happened to his ship. He's like, how do I solve this? I've got my magnetic screwdriver, or I've got a revert. And what I love is we've got no clue what he's doing, but you get these little shots of the dashboard where it's like, oh, there's engine 1, there's engine 2. Oh, the power's leveling out, and now he's going to do this.
It's because of those point of view shots as well. You feel like you're in it, don't you?
Oh, it's so well
like
done.
You say, it is like you went to an arcade and played it in an arcade type thing.
I wonder how much of that there was around, like, because George Lucas famously for the original Star Wars films didn't get paid a huge amount, but took on like all the like merchandising type things, something which is kind of parodied in like Spaceballs, I remember as well. And he had the same deal for these films where he didn't get very much sort of payment up front, although I imagine he did very well, but got a lot from like the spin-offs. And obviously the computer games were at that time as well big and still are big business. So I wonder how much he thought, you know what, a game based on the pod race, I'll make this a really
I never even
big
thought that's a
part
really
of it, and I will have all these like little bits like the dashboard, like where you can see his engines, which I'm pretty sure was part of the game as well. Like you could see the damage to your ship and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, maybe I'm overthinking that. Maybe
probably not.
I like it though.
Not knowing Lucas. And I guess obviously in the original ones, Darth Vader is almost as well, probably bigger than like any other character. So in this film, you think, right, well, we have Darth Maul, who is the villain.
Darth Maul. Big Maul.
Darth Maul. That's what I said, didn't I?
Darth Maul.
And personally, I mean, I think he's a great baddie. To live up to Darth Vader is hard, but he does look like he's kind of I don't know, turned up at a kid's party and had his face painted though. And,
no, I love his look. His look, like
amazing.
that first reveal when it's the Emperor is having a chat with those two guys, and then you just see from that's a very good impression, and then you see the Darth Maul in this projection just kind of appear from behind like the Emperor, and it's just like, oh wow.
This is my apprentice, Darth Maul. He will find your lost ship.
Well, he's only in the film for like
he's not in it
8.5 minutes, and he has 3 lines.
Wow.
Doesn't the funny thing is, like, I don't know much about modern Star Wars, as I'm sure that is the same with you two. I'm sure he comes back.
Does he?
Yeah.
And he's got robot legs.
Yeah. So basically, there's like obviously there's all this canon stuff. So I mean, I remember before they did like the newer films. There was a series of books that were released after like the 77 etc. Star Wars, and like Chewbacca was the first like known character that died in those series of books, and then they almost got scrubbed out of existence. And they went back to
that's
films.
right.
But yeah, like Darth Maul, because everyone loved him so much, I think he came back in like the Clone Wars, which was like a cartoon series that came afterwards, and maybe something else as well. But yeah, like originally Darth Maul was going to be a much bigger character in the film. There's actually a lot more lines that he had in the original script. I think they filmed a lot of them. It was like Peter Serafinovich, who's like the comedian.
He's the voice of Ray Park is the martial artist, isn't it?
Yeah. But originally it was Benicio del Toro was cast as Darth Maul, but they cut down the script so much that he dropped out, and obviously he kind of became this presence rather, I guess, than anything else. But similar, like look at Darth Vader, like they use James Earl Jones's voice.
Yeah, that's a good
old
point.
boss's face, Prowse, his actual body as well. But yeah, Darth Maul is incredibly memorable, and it's probably the most iconic character, I would say, from this. But again, he did that in such a short, with such limited amount of influence on the film, and it's because, as you said, the bits where he is there's such a presence, and the lightsaber fight, especially the latter one, is sort of very memorable. So yeah.
What's great about the original trilogy is you're in the midst of this space wars, Star Wars. That's why I like calling it Space Wars. In that you've got this whole war between, the baddies and the goodies, right? The baddies want to overthrow the universe. The rebels are like, no. The problem with the prequels, especially Attack of the Clones, is it's the build-up to that. So you get good action scenes, as we've talked about. Pod race, final battle. But a lot of this movie is just people talking about trade agreements. Meetings, that's so and don't get me wrong, like...
It's nice to see the characters, because that's where you get Samuel Jackson and Yoda. Yeah. I, on your point, I totally agree. Like, that was one of my, like, almost like down points of this film. It's like, why am I watching it's like trade wars? It's like, all of that kind
of... That's what it should be called.
Yeah,
trade wars.
A lot of the criticism at the time was around. It was like, why has George Lucas waited all this time to do basically this like political manoeuvring film about bloody like trade and aliens and all sorts of stuff?
It's fine to set it up at the beginning, but they come back to it about 4 or 5 times.
Well, it's all
film,
about basically the who we later learn to be what's his face?
Darth Sidious.
Yeah, essentially just
Senator
manipulating his way to power. Yeah. So,
which is, I think, one of the all-time non-reveals, because it's like, the guy that sounds like Darth Sidious is actually Darth Sidious. Hello, I'm Emperor Palpatine. I am now Darth Sidious.
Well, you say that, like when Ian McGregor got sort of recast to come back and do it, he thought he was just coming back as a senator. He didn't even realise that he was the Emperor,
he was
kind of thing, until like he read, like, because you know what these sort of scripts were like. Even at this time, it's like you'd only get a certain segment of it. You probably wouldn't get too much of it in advance. It's fearful of leaks and all that kind of thing.
Of course.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, we're going to obviously talk about the lightsaber fight. There's so many things about this that I'd forgotten about how good they were. I mean, I remember, like Smith said, those...
what are you undoing?
No, just taking his trousers off.
That was
a loud zip.
That was his flies. Just a really long fly.
I'm getting my lightsaber out.
It's because we're going to start talking. We're going to start talking about the final battle. And I'm just getting a bit excited.
So,
as Smith said earlier, like the two scenes, definitely. Like Swift said, when you come out of this film, the two scenes you remember most of all are the pod race and the final Jedi lightsaber battle, and it's what made me. I remember in the cinema, you're sitting there and you know you're going to get. You've already seen a couple of lightsaber confrontations. But it's so funny. I don't want to, be harsh on the original, but it's so funny when you go back to like the original trilogy or A New Hope with like, I shall strike you down. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful. And it's all this. In this one, it's like ching ching,
jump.
It's like Jackie Chan has stunt directed it, but it is amazing and like I love the way
so dynamic. It's the choreography as well is amazing, and the sound design.
That's what I mean. It's the sound design, the music, the choreography, and it's one of those things you could say like. I think there's a genius bit of writing in it in terms of right. We're going to have this thing where it's Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? How about Darth Maul has a dual, like a lightsaber, a double-ended lightsaber, and it's like, holy shit, that's a great idea because now he's going to battle both of them and be highly proficient at fighting both of them, and the fight goes on, but it never feels too long-winded, and the locations are. I
love how the kind of force field thing comes up.
Because
it's like just wait.
It's like, oh my god, I can't get to him while Liam Neeson is fighting him, and it's so well done because you.
But you get this, the corridor of like, what do you call them? Almost like red force fields that come down. And then it's like when you think about it, what's the practicality of that? And I'm sure there is something like there's probably a bloody Star Wars entry somewhere on Wikipedia where it's a whole thing about this was the red shields of Endor designed by the militant.
Is that actually a Wikipedia, or is that the greatest thing?
There is a Wikipedia, there is a Wikipedia,
Wow. There we go.
Which is genius. But those red doors are a great storytelling device in terms of Qui-Gon. He's fighting Darth Maul. Those red shields come, and he just sits down. And I love that bit where he just sits down and meditates, and Darth Maul paces like a caged animal.
Yeah.
I love it. It's
also,
so intense.
Before we get to this point, I loved Maul's like kind of reveal with the coming out of the. It's almost like a big like lift. Thing.
Yes,
and for the first time he brings his hood down, and you see the horns again. So devil-like.
Again, that religious iconography. Yeah, he is like a devil, isn't he? So
he's such a great character, and Qui-Gon gets
very clinical
killed.
and quite reminiscent of the original one when Obi-Wan dies.
And just to rag on the modern Star Wars. In from what I've seen of reviews of modern Star Wars shows, characters, I think even in the Obi-Wan show, there's a character that gets penetrated with a lightsaber. And then they're okay in the next scene. It's like, I just got lightsabers.
Oh, wow.
They've almost like taken the threat of lightsabers out, and people can heal from them now. And it's just like that's a bit weird, but it's in the hands of people that are just trying to make content now. So it's like, better not kill off that character. We need them for another season. Well, how do we get out of this? So they got better.
But and also this, but we hinted at it right at the beginning because of the music. This is where the music is at its best as well because you've got that ethereal music. You've got the double lightsaber, and I remember when you first see that because one lights up and then you're like, oh cool, and then the other one does. It doesn't go, it's
a great reveal.
But the way he fights them, and then in that point you're like, okay, you only want you want Obi-Wan to obviously fight him on his own. How are they going to get there? And it's brilliant. And that last fight where Obi-Wan is like basically hanging on, isn't he, in this kind of like carrier thing.
I think that's a bit of a clunky little bit at the end where he sort of like. Because he jumps up, does a little spin, grabs his lightsaber, and like Darth Maul is just kind of stood there like, wow, he jumped up.
Yeah.
And then gets I remember in the cinema, people actually, we did as well, like, quite a few people laughed because not that he gets sliced, you're like, wow, he
sliced him in half, doesn't he?
When you don't see that at first. It's when he falls, and then we were like, he got
really
sliced
silly,
in half.
you just see the two parts floating down.
It's awkwardly done. It's sort of like bloop. It's almost like when the big baddie gets killed at the end of RoboCop and turns into a Ray Harryhausen stop motion thing. If you've ever seen that, was just like, oh, and he falls off the building. He's got these really long arms. It's like, what the fuck is that? It's like they can't get people falling to their death very well. But yeah, that final confrontation between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul was great, because like Obi-Wan's full of rage and he's just seen his master killed, and he leaps out, and there's this one take that must have been choreographed within an inch of its life, and it's like obviously a wide shot, but it's Darth Maul and Obi-Wan Kenobi just going at it, like, and it's just so good, because you see the way, like, one's using his lightsaber like a sword and the other one's using his lightsaber like a bow staff, so he's like ching ching, like blocking it and everything. It's like, oh, this is fantastic. But Obi-Wan wins the day. Hurrah!
And then he can go on and train Darth Vader. Yay!
Yeah, exactly.
Yay! You're going to train the baddie.
Well, we all know what happens next, I guess. But
well, I tell you what happens next. Attack of the Clones, the only film I've ever seen in the cinema where I fell asleep.
Really?
Fell asleep?
Wow. You fell asleep?
Fell asleep. Odeon in Leicester. You fell asleep? Odeon in Leicester Square. It was packed. Me and my friends were like, we were just. Like, we weren't ruining it for anybody else.
I don't think I've seen either of those two since the cinema, so I'm going to go back and watch them.
I've not seen them since the first time.
Likewise.
I remember the
Phantom
third
Menace
one
is the only one I've probably seen
more, but anyway, yeah. Trivia? I think we should get to some.
There is quite a bit of trivia, but I'll try and kind of rattle through it as best as I can. So, like we mentioned, obviously Liam Neeson being in this, he signed on without like reading any of the script. As soon as they said, "Do you want to be in Star Wars?" he was like, "Absolutely."
Wow.
Ewan McGregor, to be fair, like I said, he was someone who was very, very, very keen to be in it. He was kind of lucky that he had that sort of English-Scottish background. Well, I should say Scottish-English, otherwise he'd probably take huge offence. But he was such a big fan of it that when he was doing a lot of the lightsaber duels, he was making the sounds whilst he was doing it. Like going shoo, shoo. And George Lucas actually had to go over to him quite a few times and be like, they will add the special effects on. You don't need to do these. Because obviously I imagine you could see him making the noises as well. And actually when he first got the part, he had his first lightsaber duel round Noel Gallagher's house, because Noel Gallagher had some prop lightsabers, and they were basically, he'd been at a party around his house in Belsize Park in London, and
I know where that was.
And the next day they were doing a bit of dueling in the back garden. So that was the first time that Ewan McGregor got to use a proper lightsaber. But when they actually signed up to do the film as well, so Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor got taken into this like dark locked room and was like given a case with lots of different lightsaber designs and said, choose your lightsaber, which for a Star Wars fan must be like the most insane, amazing thing ever. It was like a long locked wooden box. And he said, George Lucas basically only gave him a limited amount of time, because he said kind of you need to connect with it through just feeling and not studying it. So it was all very much like, oh, the Force, choose through the power of the Force. So that's how they chose their lightsabers as well. So yeah, and we spoke a little bit about casting as well earlier. Obviously we mentioned Keira Knightley being in this. We mentioned
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams was going to be Jar Jar.
Could probably work. Yeah.
Well,
do you know what? That
probably be better.
A bit of casting.
Well, it's weird because like Ahmed Best he had kind of signed up to do the body movements of Jar Jar and basically said, yeah, I'll do the voice as well if you want. And they were like, okay, which seems really strange to me that they were like, yeah, go on then, we got no one better to do it. But apparently Michael Jackson campaigned heavily to be the voice of Jar Jar Binks, as in the singer Michael Jackson. But George Lucas only decided against casting him because he felt it would compromise the film, obviously having someone that big playing that role. And at one point George Lucas actually took Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar, and Natalie Portman back to a Michael Jackson gig, and they went backstage to meet him because he wanted to get Michael Jackson's approval of casting Ahmed Best as Jar Jar Binks.
That is bonkers.
And Ahmed Best obviously got cast for the role and was about to fly to England and actually really like badly scalded and burnt himself drinking some tea, which is like that classic English thing, before he even got there, to the point that he was in like a huge amount of pain, like had scars on his body, but just didn't tell anyone because he didn't want to jeopardize the fact that he may not get the role if he was is injured. So there's a few strange things around the history of Jar Jar. But someone else who like campaigned heavily for the role, for a role, I should say, in the film, was none other than Tupac Shakur.
What?
Who you may know primarily as a rapper.
Jar Jar.
Not for Jar Jar.
No, for a role.
Well, apparently, like Mace Windu, it's been speculated it might have been. He's like lobbied mutual friends of his to get in touch with George Lucas so they could set up a meeting. But obviously, he died in September '96, so it was like very, very early in like the pre-production planning
Tupac
phase.
was a great actor, so it actually, when you think about it, it's not that surprising thinking about it now. But I just wouldn't associate him with being interested in Star Wars for some reason, like.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things, like how much truth there is in this, who knows, but it's certainly something that's been discussed about since. And then Sofia Coppola also appears in the film as well as like a random extra. Like she was like preparing a script for Virgin Suicides around this time, and she heard Lucas was making this film. She asked if she could accompany him whilst he was creating this film, because obviously she's got loads of connections through her father and everything else. And he offered her a role in like the Royal Entourage, and like she accepted because she was like, well, it's a good vantage point without necessarily getting in the way. I'm on the set, I can kind of see what's going on. So she sort of got some of her directorial experience from being on the set.
Nice.
And then obviously we know George Lucas and Spielberg are huge chums and all that. This is probably one of the most common bits of trivia known about the film is during one of the very exciting Galactic Senate scenes, down in the bottom corner when Queen Amidala is asking for a vote of no confidence, there's a bunch of E.T.s there as well. And if you remember from E.T. as well, there's like an in-joke for Star Wars in E.T. where they take E.T. out during Halloween, and there's like someone, I think the dog maybe is in like a Yoda costume. And E.T. almost like looks at Yoda as if he knows them. And so this is like the payback, I suppose, for that. So
the crossover that everyone was waiting for.
Exactly. So that's one of the most kind of memorable ones as well. And then I mentioned like Ron Howard earlier on as well. So Ron Howard recently basically said that Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg were all approached by Lucas to say, can one of you direct this film? And all of them said, it's just too daunting. Like, we can't do it, which is why Lucas ended up doing so. So there you go. And then last bit of trivia. Well, there's a couple of more bits of trivia. We mentioned about like how big a deal it was, like the amount of people who wanted to go and watch this film. Apparently the Wall Street Journal reported that so many people wanted to go to the premieres, lots of companies just closed their doors on the day the film was released because so many people were just not going to go to work. Which is mad. But yeah, like one of my favourite bits of trivia is the forest scenes from Naboo were actually filmed at a place called Castleberry Park, which is in Watford.
Wow.
So there you go, a bit of Star Wars trivia for you is that some of it is filmed in bloody Watford.
Bloody Watford.
But there's also a film, I don't know if you guys have heard of this one as well, a film called Fanboys that was released.
Yes, this came out, was it around about the same time or after?
It was definitely after, but it's got like Jay Busherell in it, who you might know from like This Is the End and a few other films. Sam Huntington, Christian Bale as well, who's obviously pretty famous. And it's basically about a group of Star Wars fans who head on a road trip to Skywalker Ranch, which is the place where George Lucas has all his stuff, to try and steal a rough cut of the Phantom Menace because one of their friends is dying from cancer and wants to see it before they die. That's the plot of the film anyway. So yeah, it's really strange that there was a film, Fanboys, made about basically Phantom Menace being such a big deal. So I always found that quite interesting. And then last one. So this is it. This is probably the last one. The sets were actually only built as high as the top of the actors' heads. And computer graphics filled in the rest. Apparently, because Liam Neeson was taller than expected and so tall,
he had to kneel
just
down.
because of his extra height, it cost him an extra $150,000 in construction. So there you go. That's what you get for being a
tall guy. Well, that was bad casting then. But yeah, fine.
Well, exactly. Should have cast Warwick Davis.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for all the roles. Warwick Davis as Darth Maul. Oh my god, that'd have been amazing. He just
apparently takes off his hat. There is, like, Jake Lloyd has said there is a 6-hour cut of this film. It's apparently amazing.
Oh, wow.
But it's never.
Lucas would have filmed so much for this.
So yeah, I'm not sure where we are with this. As in, like, I can't,
Well, I mean, we finished talking about
like what you guys actually think of it and what your ratings are out of 10. Etok, why don't you kick us off?
Oh, Christ.
No, his name is
no.
Anakin.
Yeah. I'll be happy to try and do this. So yeah, I think it's weird. Like, obviously, I've only seen this one maybe once since seeing it at the cinema. I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, but I will happily watch the. You know, I watched what I should have said before is I watched the
Star Wars Christmas special.
No, the holiday special.
Holiday special. Sorry.
I watched the A New Hope 4, 5, and 6 in preparation for when I went to see Phantom Menace. Just so I was like, right, what's a Darth Vader? I mean, I knew the basics, but yeah. So I did my research, as it were. Starting off with Jar Jar, who is, I think, a character that if you were to, let's say you rate this movie out, let's say you give this movie a 10. If you were to give this movie a 10, Jar Jar takes about, I feel like 3 or 4 points off of that. Because he's so, I really do. I think, because I remember like the criticisms that when people would criticise the inclusion of Jar Jar, people would say, well, Star Wars has always been for kids, and that, you know, they had Ewoks. And it's like, yeah, but there's a difference. There's a context. With the Ewoks, there was like a few silly moments, but they were this tribe of little creatures that didn't speak English, and like their body language was what led to humour. But most of the time they were quite like serious little savage creatures. Jar Jar is this almost like wacky parodies. I wrote down like his humour feels like it appeals to the almost like youngest audience, like real like
4-year-olds.
The Ewoks would. Yeah, like almost like Teletubbies. He's like a deranged Teletubby, and it was around the same time as Teletubbies too.
And it was being filmed in England, so maybe Lucas was like,
"Watch Teletubbies
and bring me that."
Let's put Lala in it, not Jar Jar.
Jar Jar Lala. I just think it's such a bad character. It just constantly pulls you out of the movie. And he's like, and it's just like, stop it. Just stop. And I think this film as well, like we're talking about the visuals of this movie, which obviously play a massive part in it. I think this was, you know, we talked about The Force Awakens briefly. When The Force Awakens was made, they made this big deal about we're going to go back to practical effects. You're going to see a puppet Yoda. You're going to see a fully realised Millennium Falcon and sets and stuff like that. Let's just talk about Phantom Menace mainly. The CGI, and I get why you would use that. You're making this massive sci-fi movie, a part of this huge franchise. You're going to want all the CGI you can use. The problem is Lucas didn't know when to stop. And I don't know if you guys, Nigel, remember, but I don't know if you remember, like in 97, they released the first trilogy as special editions with all these.
They messed up.
Well, this was the big
Guido shoots first.
The beginning of the meddling, because as we know, these films have been Lucas up until the time he left the franchise, as in sold it to Disney. He was still fiddling with them. There's like about 4 or 5 different versions of A New Hope, where Greedo shoots first, then Greedo slightly shoots first. There's that digitally altered one where Han Solo's head digitally is moved across. He does a little. It's like
because everyone was like, "There's no way you'd have missed from there," kind of thing, and it's
it's terrible.
No, it's because this is why.
And so I'm the reason I'm bringing about those special editions is that I think that was the beginning of Lucas. I would say the films losing the heart of what made them Star Wars, because the heart of Star Wars, the love that people have for that franchise, is primarily from those first 3 movies. Because, like anything, the amount of practical magic that goes into it, the amount of hard work in terms of we need to make this spaceship fly. How are we going to do this? We're going to build a little set. We're going to do this. By throwing so much CGI, I feel like you lose so much of the heart of the movie. There's something so raw about the original Star Wars movies that you almost see that love and effort on screen. So I don't know. I will say this about the film. This film obviously took so much shit, I think, in the years that followed. I think it's aged better now because so much shit has come out since that makes the Phantom Menace look incredibly loyal to the Star Wars franchise. Whereas when it came out, people were like, what is this? What's this kid version of Star Wars, Jar Jar Binks? I think now it looks better than it did, but I still think it's a massively flawed movie. The story is just... when you look at how many places they go to, we go here, we go there, we go here, we go there, we go here, and it's just talk, and you get the odd, lightsaber, laser fire, pod race. And as great as those action scenes are, I just don't think they can carry the movie enough. Let's be honest, if I said to you, do you want to put the Phantom Menace on? It's like, yeah, let's go to the pod race and the final Jedi battle. So you're not going to go, let's go to that scene where they're talking for like 30 minutes about the trade dispute between the Gungans and the Nomads or whatever. I think I'll just have to give it, I'm going to sit on the fence, just give it a 5 out of 10.
Fair enough.
See, 5 is never like a middle score for me. That is a poor score, but yeah.
It's a 5.
I know.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 5 is in the middle.
Football ratings, like players always get a rating from like 4 to about 9. Like it's almost like 1 to 3 doesn't exist. But anyway, this is.
But then you may as well call it 1 to 7.
I know. It's mad.
Fair enough. Fair. 5 out of 10. Yeah. Fair enough. Shall I go? It's really interesting because, both of you, by the sound of it, not seeing this for a long time, checked out of Star Wars as a genre, as a franchise for many years. The last one I saw at the cinema was Rogue One, I think, and being very confused. However, I've really enjoyed going back and watching the original 3. Kind of, it's made me want to watch these 3 and then pick it up again, but maybe not watch all the in-betweeny films. I'm not sure I really care too much for those.
It's the shows, not the films.
The shows, the series. But yeah, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. I still have very fond memories of this film for the experience of seeing it at 16 years old as well, so same age as Nige. It was like one of the biggest events to go and see a film, and I remember people talking about going and watching this multiple times. It was like that, and like Titanic and stuff. People would go back and watch them over and over again, and this was one of those films that you don't get very often now. I know we've had it recently with Barbenheimer, but you don't get it very often. So it's amazing that this, and you don't get it with Star Wars anymore because of the oversaturation.
No.
Whereas you did, even with Force Awakens, you did.
Definitely.
But I would say, I agree on your point. So the trade war stuff is overdone. I think it's good to give it context at the start, but it's a bit boring. I unlike maybe Nige, but with you on that, Etok, I really liked Ewan McGregor in this film. I thought the little kid does really well. Natalie Portman does well. She's directed to be it's clever, as the decoy and the stuff, but it's also a bit confusing. I don't really understand why they needed to swap them back. We didn't talk too much about her character, but they keep swapping her back, and it's like, I don't think they needed to do that, because then it's like, oh wait a minute, who's the queen? And I still don't really know, but I don't really care. I like Natalie Portman as the Princess Leia. She's basically like Princess Leia, isn't she, in this film? And what they try and do with this film is bring the kind of the core together in this little group, which I get, so they do that well throughout the film. Darth Maul's a brilliant baddie. The lightsaber fights are amazing. The pod thing, the music's great. The pod thing is great, although I think in hindsight probably a bit long, on the small screen. This film overall, like Jar Jar, I won't go over it because I think you said it. But I would say this film is enjoyable and not as bad as I remember. And maybe that is because Star Wars these days has got worse. The great set pieces. The CG didn't bother me too much, but at times, some of the characters, I was like, oh, why have I got a floating, all the characters that are in Jar Jar's world, all of those, I totally agree, some of those, but the droids didn't bother me too much, and the spaceship stuff, and you've got to probably do it like that. But I remember when Red Dwarf went CG, and it was like, oh god, it's awful.
I don't even remember that.
They did it in series 7 or something, and that's probably when everybody checked out anyway. But anyway, a long way of saying I'm not quite as low as you, Etok, but this isn't a great film. I'm going to go for a 6 out of 10. It was fine.
Fair dues.
Nige.
Yeah.
I would say I'm a massive Star Wars fan. Like, whilst I've got a bit fed up with the oversaturation, I still watch The Mandalorian.
Oh, did you?
I still watch Boba Fett. I even tried watching Obi-Wan, but I think I gave up after about 4 episodes, because I was like, this is just not very good. And partly because I didn't like Obi-Wan being Ewan McGregor. Yeah. And like, don't get me wrong, like when Ewan McGregor is good, he is unbelievably good. Like Train Spotting, absolutely immense. I remember him being like ER, like just off of the back of Train Spotting as well, and in a really classic episode. And there's a few films that he's really good in, but when he's bad, God, when he feels like he's a little bit miscast, it just never works for me. And I feel like he is in this. And I don't think there's anyone, as I said, like quite early on, I don't think anyone comes out of this in terms of like acting chops. But I agree with what Etok said in the sense of it's the way they're directed, it's the way the roles have been written, it's the way they've been asked to play it. Like Natalie Portman before this did Leon and Beautiful Girls,
of course,
was amazing. And in this, she's still good, but she's a bit hamstrung by it all. And I think there's been a big movement on the internet quite recently about like her just looking relaxed in like off-camera shots whilst playing this role, and people kind of forget how like graceful and beautiful and just like perfect she was really for this role, but it just doesn't really work. And even Liam Neeson's character I don't think really works. He kind of did it again, didn't he, as part of the Batman series later on when he plays the kind of master to Batman. Do you remember that? Batman Begins?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So they go, kind of came back and almost redid the role. And like Samuel L. Jackson, to be honest, I don't like any of the prequels at all. Like, I've never connected with any of them. They always just felt like, just something that happened, but I just didn't enjoy. And this one's probably got the worst. Well, it has got the worst rating on IMDb.
Worse than the second one.
Really?
I always thought that was the worst. Personally,
I thought Attack of the Clones was bum.
No, so this one's got a 6.5. Attack of the Clones has got a 6.6, and Revenge of the Sith has got a 7.6.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
Revenge was the best of the three, but sorry.
So like it just doesn't work. There's even like Terrence Stamp rocks up in it, and like he was so fed up about talking to tennis balls that he just said, I'm not doing this after this film, and kind of got pretty much written out the entire thing. Brian Blessed doing a bit of voicing of Boss Nass as well, which is a nice Flash Gordon callback. But yeah, I just don't like this film. Even the pod race, I remember when I was younger, I was a bit like, it's just a bit much, isn't it? Like, it's fine, but it's just like, it's a little kid, it's a bit stupid, it's just like...
Ash doesn't like the pod race.
Nige didn't see it at the cinema though.
Exactly, and I think I did miss out on that. I do appreciate Darth Maul. I think they maybe could have done more with him, but maybe that would have ruined his mystique a little bit.
You love the final Jedi battle, though.
It's all right.
I
love the music. Now, that's the one thing that really keeps this film from being something I really dislike. And like some of the costume design is amazing as well. Some of the visuals are good, but the music is so good.
Yeah.
Like John Williams really pulled it out on this. But yeah, it's a film that if you hadn't have asked me to watch for this, I don't think I'd have ever watched again. I don't think, even having watched this, I have no interest at all to go back and watch episode 2 or episode 3. Like, it's almost like Indiana Jones, like, there's only like 3 of them, although actually we kind of like the most recent one. Or like Terminator, there's only 2 of them. With Star Wars, it's almost like I just like the original 3, and I kind of like the newer ones. I prefer the newer ones to these 3. Yeah, by quite a distance, I would say. So yeah, but anyway... Long way of me saying I did not like this at all. I was quite interested. I thought, that's pretty bad. I can't. Yeah, it's like a very low score. I went back to IMDb and I'd actually given it a rating from the last time I watched it even lower than I was thinking. So I'm going to fall on a 4 out of 10 for this.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Nige.
So yeah,
I gave it a 5 and he was like, that's very low.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Because you said enough about it where you were like, oh, yeah, it's pretty good in this bit, it's pretty good in this. For me, it's like, most of it is bad and I give it a 4. And that's only one less than you. But yeah.
That is what we think of Star Wars. We finally dipped our toe into this universe. Phantom Menace. But what do you guys think? Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. X us at Offradar Podcast. Watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and get in touch. Give us another film to watch. Wikipedia. I will check that out. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, look at Wikipedia.
Do you fancy sending us a film to review or letting us know your thoughts on a film that we have discussed? All of your comments will be read out in our end of season leaderboard episode. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. Message us on Facebook. All links and info in the description down below.
Do it! Do it!